What's up everyone, and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Michael Chandler details beef with Arman Tsarukyan. While Michael Chandler was sitting on the sidelines for the past 2 years waiting for a fight with Conor McGregor, Arman Tsarukyan was throwing shade at him online. And before we continue, make sure to leave a like on the video to help support the channel. On one occasion, Tsarukyan trolled Chandler by saying that in the time he sat and waited for a fight with Conor McGregor, he could have lost several exciting fights. More recently, Tsarukyan called Iron Mike easy money for Charles Oliveira ahead of the upcoming rematch between the two next weekend. During an interview with New York Post Sports, Chandler opened up on the comments from Tsarukyan while addressing the beef.
He's just a young, hungry dude, making his presence be known. And he's matured. He's got some great wins. His last win was over Oliveira, my next opponent. So he's earned this title shot. This is going to be a rematch with him and Islam. He's doing his thing, but yeah, he doesn't like me. Says bad things about me. After he beat Oliveira, I was actually in back. I went back and congratulated him. I mean, I'm going to always operate like I don't necessarily like the guy, my opponent, but I don't have anything against him. I don't go into the octagon with any malice or ill will in my heart. But Arman's doing his thing, man. I wish him well. I think Islam absolutely smokes him, but at least he's got great hair.
If Chandler winds up beating Charles Oliveira next weekend in New York City, then he could wind up being first in line for a crack at Arman Tsarukyan's title, depending on how his fight with Islam Makhachev plays out in the new year. Makhachev's team announced that the fight will happen in January, but so far, the UFC has not confirmed the news. Either way, with the potential title shot on the line, the stakes couldn't be higher for Chandler heading into UFC 309. Kamaru Usman versus Shavkhat Rakhmonov at UFC 310? Even though Belal Muhammad is out of his upcoming fight with Shavkhat Rakhmonov, the Nomad still wants to fight on the UFC 310 card in December. Negotiations between his team and the UFC are still ongoing, but in the meantime, there's been tons of talk about a fight between Rakhmonov and Kamaru Usman for the interim belt. In a post on social media on Tuesday, Usman teased a return to action by sharing some photos of himself hitting mitts with Trevor Whitman, along with the caption, "Troublemaker, I soon come." The post comes on the heels of Rakhmonov saying earlier in the week that he wants to fight Usman for an interim title during an appearance on the Ariel Helwani show. If a fight does happen, it'll be interesting to see how things play out, given that the two trained together over the summer and got some live rounds in. While the UFC figures out how they're going to handle the situation, Rakhmonov seems to be living his best life, sharing a video of himself enjoying some food in between training sessions on social media. UFC fighter fires back at Daniel Cormier for comments. On the UFC 308 prelims, Rinat Fakhretdinov picked up a unanimous decision victory over Carlos Leal to pick up his 5th win in the UFC. The problem, of course, was that the MMA community overwhelmingly scored the bout in favor of Leal, with the verdict community scorecards showing that fans scored all 3 rounds in Leal's favor. On top of fans online criticizing the decision, Daniel Cormier questioned the decision on the broadcast, which led to Fakhretdinov criticizing the commentary team. After DC fired back and called him a moron, now it's Fakhretdinov firing back. During an interview with Meta MMA, he said, "It looks like he made a bet on an opponent that didn't work out. I liked my fight. The criticism didn't hurt me. Cormier is not a close person to me." Cormier recently just squashed some beef with Joaquin Buckley back in October when the two sat down and cleared the air during fight week, and he's already said that he has to get to the bottom of Derek Lewis's beef with him. Now, it sounds like DC will have to add Fakhretdinov to that list. UFC updates. Even though Fight Week is already underway for the UFC's 100th event at the Apex, they had to do some scrambling after Nicholas Dalby was forced out of his scheduled fight with Eliseo Zaleski. In Dalby's place, Zaleski is now set to fight Zach Scroggin on short notice, an undefeated welterweight with a record of 7-0, who will be looking to pick up a big victory in his UFC debut. Later that night, it was revealed that Cody Garbrandt is also out of his fight this weekend against Miles Johns due to undisclosed reasons, according to Cole Shelton. It's kind of interesting to see many UFC fighters pull out with the UFC not revealing the reason. For example, it happened this past weekend with Derek Lewis. It's not been a couple of days since UFC Edmonton, and we still have no idea what's happening with Lewis. It looks like UFC Tampa also took a hit, with Tracy Cortez pulling out due to an injury, according to Nolan King. MMA Junkie reported last night that Tracy Cortez versus Miranda Maverick is off the card, but there could be a replacement for Tracy Cortez. Shifting gears and looking ahead to the new year, Ketlen Vieira is set to throw down with Macy Chiasson on February 22nd, but so far it's unclear where the card on that day will be taking place. Vieira is fresh off a loss to Kayla Harrison last month, while Chasson is trying to pick up her third win in a row after going 2-0 in 2024. With UFC exec Dave Shaw saying this past weekend that the UFC wants to get out of the Apex more in 2025, it'll be interesting to see if the card winds up being a fight night event on the road. Tom Aspinall sends advice to Stipe Miocic for Jon Jones fight. Not many people are giving Stipe Miocic much of a chance against Jon Jones next weekend. Even though Miocic is considered to be the best heavyweight in UFC history, the fact that he's been out for 3.5 years and he's making his return against Jon Jones has many fans doubting him. The way Tom Aspinall sees things, Miocic has some real knockout power compared to Jones. During an interview with Safest Casino Sites, the interim champ explained how he would fight Jones if he was Miocic. I'd be looking for the knockout against Jon Jones is what I'd be looking for with him. I'd be trying to push him back and use his size. It's not even like he can use the experience. They're both as experienced as one another, but I'd just be using my size on him, trying to push him back and knock him out. I think that Stipe Miocic has got that big knockout power in comparison to Jon Jones, so I think he can knock him out. Of course, trying to get a knockout against Jones is easier said than done, and so far, no fighter has been able to drop the future Hall of Famer. With Fight Night less than 2 weeks away, the big question is whether or not the winner of the fight will stick around for a title unification bout with Aspinall, or whether both fighters will retire afterwards. As Aspinall said late last month, his plan is to turn up to fight week, do some media, cause a few scenes, and then weigh in as the backup fighter. From there, he plans to try and make the winner of the fight stick around to fight him in a title unification bout. MMA community reacts to Nate Diaz footage. One fan got more than he bargained for this week when he asked Nate Diaz for an autograph out on the streets. Even though Diaz was out and about standing on the street corner, he challenged the fan to put the gloves on and throw down. While the impromptu sparring session was lighthearted, at one point Diaz even took the guy down despite being on the pavement. Afterward, the Stockton superstar posted the footage on his Instagram, along with the caption, "This dude pulled up on me to sign these gloves, so I made him fight me." The MMA community was quick to react to the post, with Kelvin Gastelum writing, "Someone get the homie Nate a fight, he's itching to get back." Another fan pointed out, "Dude will enjoy that memory even more than the gloves." One joked, "Dude walks around with 2 pairs of 3-ounce gloves at all times? I may have a new hero." Another member of the MMA community was a fan of the move. Now, this is probably the coolest thing a UFC fighter has done on the street for a fan. One member of the MMA community didn't like that the fan pulled out Shara Magomedov's double spinning back fist. You get the chance of a lifetime to shadowbox with Nate Diaz and you use the chance to do some girly spins and shy away? Another agreed. I would have gotten a couple of hits in, I don't know what bro was doing. So far, no word yet on whether or not Diaz will wind up back in the UFC for his next fight. Former UFC fighter on the most wanted list. Former UFC fighter Brian Caraway no-showed for a pre-trial conference this week. According to MMA Fighting, back in 2021, Caraway allegedly stole an ATV from his ex-girlfriend, Miesha Tate, who he dated for several years. After stealing the ATV, he filed an insurance claim to try and get Geico to pay out a stolen vehicle claim, but after an investigation turned up evidence that he forged the title, he withdrew his claim. The problem was that Geico was required to turn the case over to law enforcement, who wound up charging Caraway with insurance fraud in 2021. The case notes explain, Caraway reported the theft of a 2015 Polaris RZR all-terrain vehicle from his property in Richland in December 2018. He bought a policy for it from Geico on December 21st and filed the claim on December 24th. He told Geico that he bought the vehicle and contents, including helmets, a battery charger, and spare tire, for $18,500 and provided a title showing his ex-girlfriend gifted it to him in January 2018. The investigation showed evidence that Caraway forged the title and that the vehicle was not in fact stolen, but was owned by and in possession of the ex-girlfriend. Now, after failing to appear in court, Caraway has been added to the top of Washington State Insurance Fraud's most wanted list. The description on the site reads, Caraway failed to appear for pre-trial conference after being charged with forgery, false statement on vehicle application certificate of title, false claims or proof in excess of $1,500, and attempted theft. So far, no word yet on what the next steps will be after Caraway's no-show this week. But if he ends up getting convicted, there's a chance he could end up doing time in jail. Concerns rise for Michael Chandler versus Charles Oliveira as Renato Moicano might have insider information on the matchup. Renato tweeted saying, "Chandler or Charles out. Call me. I fight on 10 days. Time is money." Now, it's very unlikely that Michael Chandler pulls out because he's been active on social media and has been doing interviews. For an example, Chandler posted this on social media today. "Almost time. Walk on. See you at the top." Charles Oliveira, on the other hand, has been completely quiet these past few weeks, which is strange considering he's fighting next week. Here's what the community had to say. Moicano, what happened to the fight? Moicano, what do you know that we don't know, buddy? Is UFC 309 co-main event in jeopardy? If Moicano UFC is healthy and cleared to fight, him being the replacement makes total sense. Let the man make his money. I don't think Chandler can afford to drop out. Does Renato Moicano know something that we don't? Will Charles or Chandler pull out of UFC 309? Let us know in the comments below. Alex Pereira drops an influencer twice with a right hook, all while he was dressed in a bunny costume. Here's the clip.
Faz uma geral dele. E aí a gente... Tá bom, vambora. Ah, filha da... Os caras são muito filha da puta. Olha aqui. Ai, tá aí.
Tá bom, fechar com 50 mesmo. Bora?
Top comments. So everything Conor has done, like the Miami Heat bathroom situation, all makes sense now. He's been doing this since 2018. It's always the same scenario of events. Honestly, Conor needs to change his ways. This is embarrassing. Khabib retired and helped his brothers become champions and make it to the UFC. McGregor is fighting off several addictions and SA cases. Do not send Strickland to China. I will pay a monthly fee to have Conor blacklisted from all videos, please.